Hello and welcome to the programme. Pro-EU forces across Europe breathed a sigh of relief when the ruling party in Moldova won a key parliamentary election on September the 28th. The presidential election in Romania had gone in the right direction, but the one in Poland did not. So for Brussels, there was a lot riding on the choice that Moldovans made. The victory of President Maya Sandu's party of Action and Solidarity against the Patriotic Bloc was hailed both in Moldova and in EU capitals as a resounding vote for the country's European future. The ex-Soviet republic applied to join the EU in 2022 alongside Ukraine and Georgia. Maya Sandu's government said that the Kremlin had tried to sway this vote with disinformation and vote buying, something echoed by European leaders but dismissed by Moscow. Well, our guest today is an MP who's just been elected in this parliamentary vote for the ruling party PAS. He is Nicu Popescu. He served as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs and European Integration of Moldova between August 2021 and January 2024. And he's also been the Foreign Minister of the country in 2019. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for inviting me.
You've said that this is an exceptional election result. What do you mean by that?
If you look at recent elections in Europe in the last 3 years, you would see that most governments, most incumbents lost elections. In Italy, in the United Kingdom, in Germany, in Poland, in Slovakia, in the United States, people have mostly voted, probably 80% of the elections, people voted against incumbents. So this makes the victory of the governing team in Moldova really exceptional by European standards, not least because the economic shock on Moldova caused by the Russian aggression against Ukraine has been much greater. The levels of inflation, the economic shock of higher energy costs on Moldova have been bigger than they were for Germany or France. And yet, Moldovans voted because they also chose, they understand the economic pain has been greater, but they've also chosen that they want to live in a country that is at peace, in a country that is democratic, and is in a country that is European. And there was a big danger that pro-Russian forces might have drawn Moldova into Russia's war against Ukraine.
What hybrid warfare did you experience in this campaign?
Of course, when you say hybrid war, very often in France or Germany, people think of disinformation on social media. And that you had a lot of that in Moldova. You had a lot of cyber attacks on the Central Election Commission, critical infrastructure, all of that has been happening. But beyond that, the Russians have really been pumping hundreds of millions of euro into the political system, paying party activists, corrupt journalists, corrupt experts, paying for leaflets, for a lot of things that are completely illegal. The Russians laid out a scheme where they distributed at least 140,000 bank cards so that they can pay people for their vote. So it was a massive vote bribing scheme.
These are all allegations that are being investigated, right? It's not in a court of law.
Several people who've been convicted. Right. It's been proven in the justice sector. And the Russians have been training people to provoke violence.
Just on one point, the OSCE, which had a mission to observe the election, it said that this election was competitive, but there were some flaws, notably the barring from participating of two Russia-friendly parties, Kremlin-friendly parties. And the OSCE said that they were barred at such short notice that they had no reasonable chance to get any redress.
Many activists of these parties have been caught with big amounts of cash. They have been caught several times. There was obviously a reluctance, and I cannot comment on the actions of the Central Election Commission, but this is bags of cash filmed, captured, where people on camera from these parties cannot explain where did they get this cash and why are they mid-ranking party activists with 50,000 or 100,000 euro. So there was, a lot of effort has been done to make sure that you still keep it. Now, at the same time, these were small parties. All the big parties, there were activists caught from the big pro-Russian parties with cash. And these parties stayed in the campaign and no one was removed.
I want to quote you something that President Putin said just before we recorded this interview. He said, "We're carefully watching the growing militarization of Europe. No one should have any doubt that Russia's countermeasures will not take a long time to come. Do you see these various drone incursions we've seen in Europe in the last few weeks as part of those, what Putin would call countermeasures?
Roughly half of the Russian budget goes to military needs. And Russia has been on a fast-track militarization drive since 2008, 2009. Russia has been militarizing like few countries did in Europe in the last decades. It's Europe that is lagging behind. It's European leaders who between 2008 and 2022 missed the fact that Russia is militarizing, did not take military threats seriously. And as a result of that, today Europe doesn't have enough means to protect its airports from drones, doesn't have enough means to have enough artillery shells to help Ukraine keep the Russian military as far away from the rest of Europe as possible. It is time for Europeans to take defense seriously. This is happening. But of course, there's also a Russian explicit policy to try and shatter European solidarity with Ukraine, but also among Europeans. There's a desire to instill fear on the European publics. This is why you have these drone attacks on Munich, on Copenhagen. It's a message to scare off the Europeans, don't invest in your defense, be afraid of Russia, don't help Ukraine because it will get worse.
The Munich incident obviously is very fresh as we are recording, so we'll have to see what any investigation says about that. But I want to talk a bit, Nicu Popescu, about your EU membership bid. There's obviously issues to do with judicial reform in Moldova. MEPs said in June that there's an urgent need to tackle money laundering and corruption. And at the moment, Moldova ranks the 76th out of 180 countries in Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. What do you need to change on that?
First of all, let's be frank about what European Union enlargements brought to Europeans and to French and to Germans. A bigger Europe brought a more peaceful and richer and more prosperous Europe. If Europe was Benelux, the European Union was Benelux, France would be poorer, Germany would be poorer. If the European Union was just Benelux and France and Germany and Italy, it would still be poorer. Spanish, Portuguese, Greek, Polish, Romanian accessions to the European Union made Europe richer, stronger, safer, more peaceful. This is how we should look at it. The cost of enlargement is a real issue, but a smaller Europe would have been today at the mercy of lots of other hostile powers. A bigger Europe is a stronger Europe, and that makes French citizens richer and live in peace. Moldova, this is where Europe consists of mostly small countries. So you add Moldova, you add Slovakia, you add Estonia, you add Portugal or Ireland, Europe is bigger, stronger, more peaceful. Moldova on the justice sector reform, 4 years ago when the Party of Action of Solidarity came to power, Moldova was on the 115th place on the Corruption Perception Index. In the last 4 years, Moldova improved by roughly 50 places. That's amazingly good progress, but it's also obvious we need to do a lot more. Obviously, there's still a lot of corruption left. The progress is great, but this is where you need to do much more. And this is what people understood. They saw progress and they want a continuation of that progress.
As I hinted at in my introduction, your EU membership application is twinned effectively with Ukraine's. And we know that Prime Minister Orban of Hungary is opposing Ukraine's membership of the EU. Does that have a knock-on effect? Does it slow down effectively your EU membership bid as well?
What we know that at different stages, accession candidates are in the same package. Croatia was given an EU accession perspective on the same day as Albania and North Macedonia. Croatia has been in the European Union over a decade, and Albania is now on a good track. So this kind of packaging, repackaging, depackaging is a natural process inside the European Union. What is important now is for Ukraine and Moldova to start accession talks, be in the same package as the countries of the Balkans, and then whoever does faster reforms deserves to be in the EU depending on their speed. And this is where the principle of meritocracy is something that is also applied in the EU enlargement process.
You've admitted that it would be easier to join the EU without a separatist conflict. That's obviously a reference to Transnistria, the breakaway region in Moldova. So the EU clearly would rather not import this conflict into the EU, same as Abkhazia and South Ossetia and Georgia. It doesn't want to import these problems into the EU.
No one wants a separatist problem. Moldova doesn't want it. The European Union's interest is not to have a country with a separatist problem. We all agree on that, and Moldova will do its utmost to solve this conflict before EU accession. At the same time, let's be frank, the European Union, the steel and coal community, the European communities were built on a divided country in the 50s called Germany. At the time, Germany was partly occupied by Russian troops.
It didn't have a separatist conflict.
It did. According to the West German constitution, East Germany was part of Germany until 75.
Okay, but it didn't have a secessionist territory in West Germany.
It was until 75. Right. East Germany was not recognized. Yeah. The European Union was built on a divided Germany. Constitutionally, East Germany was part of Germany until 1975. Cyprus is inside the EU. It creates inconveniences on some issues, but we all agree that it's better for stability in that part and for the rest of the EU to have Cyprus inside, even if it still has a separatist problem.
Very good point about Cyprus. We've run out of time, but thank you so much for being my guest. Nicu Popescu, recently elected MP and former Deputy Prime Minister and former Foreign Minister of the Republic of Moldova. Do stay with us here on France 24.